Hello and welcome to another evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf. 70,000 naira. Yes, that's the new minimum wage, and there will certainly be enough to talk about on that one. But it's now a week since the Supreme Court gave its landmark judgment granting financial autonomy to local governments. As expected, all shades of opinion have trailed this judgment, ranging from the very positive to that of those who believe their lordships may have stretched a little too far the meaning of the letters of the Constitution, which were quite unambiguous in their wording. Wherever you stand in the spectrum of reactions, the Supreme Court has ruled, and the expectation is that this ruling will foster development at the grassroots, whose people the local governments are the closest to. The question now is how, given that the ruling of the Apex Court covered largely financial autonomy, there's still political and administrative autonomy. Now, while pondering that, the Senate recently fired its majority whip, Senator Ali Ndume, replacing him with his kingsman, Senator Mohammed Monguno, after Senator Ndume had granted an interview severely criticizing the president and leadership of his party. How will this eventually play out for the party, given that the leadership of the National Assembly is only a year in office and Senator Ndume is still a bona fide member of the 10th Assembly and still has another 4 years or 3 years as a member of the National Assembly and was the DG of the campaign that produced the current Senate President, Godswill Akpabio? These are some of the questions we mull tonight. My guest is a former member of the 8th Senate and human rights activist, Senator Shehu Sani. Senator, welcome to Hard Copy.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start first and foremost with the minimum wage issue. Do you think that 70,000 naira is a fair wage, given where Labour, first of all, started with this particular discussion?
Well, you see, in life, there is nothing that is enough as far as money is concerned. If you will be earning 1 million naira, naturally you will have a problem of 2.5 million naira. If your salary is raised to 500,000, your problems will jump to 1 million naira. So there is never a time when money is enough. If persons like Elon Musk or Zuckerberg will have to spend $20 million per annum to protect themselves, and that was not what they spent 10, 15, 30, 40 years ago. They were spending less. So that I'm talking philosophically. Now, practically, I don't see the reality of any person and the current realities of Nigeria surviving in 70,000 naira. But we are a third world country. What do we produce? We export oil and we export agricultural produce. So we may have our ideal figures, but how do we earn it? Will the government go about printing money in order to meet our minimum wage? And we also have to take cognizance that minimum wage is not simply about staffs of the federal government, staffs of the state government, and staffs of the local government. It's also about you. You have a driver, you have to pay him 70,000. You have a housemaid, you have to pay her 70,000. You have a gardener, you have to pay him 70,000. You have a chef, you have to pay him 70,000, or a cleaner or a shopkeeper. So it's also about other people who are not working. If the federal government now raised minimum wage to 250,000, know that as a Nigerian, that's what you're going to pay your own staff. And the whole country is not about civil servants. It's not about federal, state, or local government. So it's about every one of us. So government cannot promise what it can deliver. If you promise 200,000 naira and you can't deliver, there will be a problem. So I believe that the president has simply looked at the purse and look at what is inside the purse and say this is what he can afford.
Do you think that this 70,000 naira minimum wage has the capacity to diffuse the planned protest that is coming up as a result of economic hardships in the land?
Well, I think it's important that we go through the little of the time we had in the last few months. Removal of subsidy resulted in the increase in revenue being shared by the Federal Allocation Committee to the states. Now, there could have been a roadmap that we are getting out of this, we are getting into this, and that these consequences should be well taken care of. And now you have so much hunger and there's so much suffering, and people are now saying, where are we heading to? Now, it's a big gamble the president has taken. If at the end of these economic reforms, it bears fruit, it delivers the goods and the promises, he becomes a national hero. If at the end, the suffering, the hardships simply continue endlessly, then he will certainly pay the price for it. So right now, as it has been done in Brazil, in Argentina, in many countries of the world that have taken on economic reforms, reforms happens, there will be hardship, there will be protest, and the way the government manages that discontent will determine its own survival.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying now is that what the government has done now by increasing minimum wage, also by sharing 20 trucks of rice to the states, will in some way calm the situation, but it's not going to, because the protest that is being called was not called by labor. It was called by some amorphous, anonymous forces. And that is one of the danger, because I have been a protester of my life, and that is where we spend most of our life protesting, standing, resisting. I mean, standing up against fundamental issues in the country. But a protest needs two things. It has to have a purpose, of course, which is hunger, which is reasonable. People can protest that. But it has to have leadership. Leadership that can drive the process, that can claim to drive the issues, and also that when demands need to be made are made, and then negotiation can be made on the table. But you have no leader. And that is the danger. Protests can lead you to Kenya, protests can lead you to Sudan. If it leads to Kenya, where it forces government to make fundamental reforms, that is fine. But it leads to Sudan. That is chaos, that is anarchy, that is destruction. And as such, any protest that will be credible and that will deliver on the reasons which it is, it needs visible leaders who will own up to it. So that is my own view on that. Yes.
And the protests have been from different quarters. I mean, yes, we have, people who are speaking on social media. We have people who have been speaking sometimes within the corridors of power. And, we have people like the whip the former whip now of the Senate, who has also been granting interviews, speaking very scathingly of, the current administration. Some people will say it's a form of protest, which doesn't seem to have gone down well with the leadership of the 10th Assembly. As a matter of fact, gone down well with the party, which has now written to the National Assembly the National Assembly, the Senate specifically, and as a result has seen him deposed, but as chief whip. But he's still a member of the National Assembly. Do you think that this is testing the tolerance levels of the leadership of the National Assembly to see how they too are tolerant of dissent, especially when the person seems to be speaking about what it precisely is happening?
Well, if I'm going to speak of myself, I will say that I stand for the rights of people to express their opinion and to criticize when things are going wrong, and to also appreciate when things go right. And there's nothing wrong with any lawmaker expressing his opinion. But in case of Ndume, I will say this. He has been in the National Assembly for over 20 years and has occupied a lot of many positions in the last 2 decades. And he has the experience as a member of National Assembly for such a long period of time. Add to that, he is also occupying a very important position as a principal officer in the Senate. And he is also a prominent and very important member of his own party. He has a lot of channels to which he can actually reach out and express his opinion. And there's a difference between a senator who is not a principal officer and the one who is a principal officer. There are some privileges attached to principal officers, which is they have more access to the leadership in the country than even people who are simply floor members. So if you express your opinion, which you have the right to do that, the political party which you represent, which also send your name as a nominee for that principal office, can exercise its own right and say, this is what we don't agree with. So I think he's paying the price for his opinion, and he spoke not out of ignorance, but he very much knew the consequences of what will happen to him. And one thing about the National Assembly, especially the Senate, is that before you make any dissenting opinion and you want it to have the necessary impact, it's good you consult people who share the same opinion with you. If not, you will stand alone. It happened with Ningi, and now it's happened with Ndume. You cannot see any senator now, no senator stood for Ningi, and no senator is standing for Ndume, because he must have done it as an individual, as a this is my opinion. And the rule in the cultish rule in the National Assembly is that if someone is reprimanded for a certain offense, if you now come out to stand for him, you may likely also send yourself to the gallows. And if it reaches a point of suspension, it comes with a lot of prices for someone to pay. If you are suspended from the Senate, one thing is very clear, is that your salary will be blocked, your allowances will be blocked, your office will be locked, you will be denied access to the premises of National Assembly, and you will remain out of business of lawmaking until that suspension is lifted. So nobody will like to carry the cross of another. And that's why you will see them, when you speak, you should know that you're going to carry your cross yourself. If you come from a ruling party and you are expected to work in tandem with everyone, in our own case,
are those unspoken rules, or that's taken for granted?
Yes. In my own case, I was able to, during my time in 8th Senate, we were able to express our dissenting view and criticize Buhari for the fact that Saraki never emerged as a president of the Senate because of his loyalty to Buhari. And he emerged out of a rebellious decision within the Senate. So there is that kind of thing. But where you have a Senate president and a Speaker of House that is controlling a National Assembly in line with the policies and program of the administration, now you come out as a principal officer and make such a remark, you will stand alone. So people wonder. When it happened to Ningi and it happened to Ndume, the PDP senators are quiet, the Labour Party senators are quiet, the NNPP...
Why do you think that is?
Because nobody wants to also be penalized for standing up for his colleague and also suffer the same purpose. The danger of it is that as a politician, if you are elected into office, your constituents want you to go and get involved in the business of lawmaking and bring the dividends of democracy to them. And if you happen to express opinion that led to your suspension, you will not get your solidarity from your constituents. Because the moment you are blocked, the moment you are caged, the moment you are excised out of the system, you will now start facing revolt at home. So this is the dilemma of people who come out to the Senate and say this.
But does that have anything to do with how? So basically what you seem to be saying is that how the leadership emerges is very important to whether or not people are able to express dissent within the chambers of the National Assembly.
Yes, that is why at the end of, or at the beginning of every session of National Assembly, no president would fold his arms and see the emergence of a rebellious or dissenting leadership in the Senate. That was a quote-unquote mistake Buhari made in 2015.
Welcome back. You're watching Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. Our guest tonight is a former member of the 8th Senate and human rights activist, Senator Shehu Sani. Are you disappointed that they seem to be a bit quiet, or I mean, maybe not a bit, just quiet. Quiet is the term I should use, because we haven't quite seen any real, we hear a few voices every now and again, but we haven't really seen any real opposition to any government. Almost everything that the government has brought in has been approved without so much as a whimper. In some instances, at least there should be a debate. There should be a seeking to understand what certain things are about. But we don't seem to get that enough.
You see, our democracy is still still on a learning process. And many of those who are in the opposition were just coming for the first time in the National Assembly, and many of them simply escaped loss by whiskers. And they came in there and they see the way Ningi was treated. And then all of them now have to simply try to navigate through the landmines. So the fear, actually, of consequences of what you may say or do, and the actions that will be taken against you without orders backing you, is virtually the reason why many of them are silent. And let me tell you this. The majority party has a leadership, and the minority party also has a leadership. And once a Senate is inaugurated, the opposition are supposed to vote for their own leader. There's a leader that will speak for them. But in the way it's been operated in the parliament, is that the ruling party will make sure that the person who will emerge as a leader of the opposition is someone also who is not too hard, who is not too rebellious, and who will not be troublesome to the party. And then so it happens.
To understand that subsidy, which we thought was gone, is back. We understand the landing price of petrol now is at about 1,170 naira. If that is the situation, would you say that there has been clarity, really, on where we're going with our economic reform? So the idea was that let the market decide. But given what is happening with the economy and the fact that people are really, really struggling as a result of these hikes, don't you think that there needs to be a little more transparency? And if you agree that there should be, where should that demand be coming from?
If actually the economic reforms will deliver the goods in the future, people will appreciate him. But if it couldn't reform, then people will now put him in the line of those who he inherited. So as for the country today, the only way to stabilize it is to stabilize the economy. And economic stabilization cannot be continuous subsidy. All our lives, those of us on the left-hand side of the political divide, the Marxists, the socialists, even the human rights activists, and people with radical political thought, we have been fighting against the removal of subsidies since during Babangida administration. But look at the journey of subsidy. We were first subsidizing in millions, then the subsidy now jumped to billions, then hundreds of billions, then trillions. Then we'd reached a point where we had to borrow money to subsidize. It means that even without Tinubu, we could have been heading to the cliff. So I believe that the nation's economy must be brought on a sound footing. And the best way to do that is, first of all, heavy investment in agriculture for there to be enough food supply. All this idea of removing waivers and importing rice and importing, it's not going to lead us anywhere. But investment in agriculture should not also be done like the way that Buhari. Under Buhari, about 3 to 4 trillion naira was pumped in what they call Uncle Boras program. Apart from the rice pyramid, which we have seen that lasted over for 48 hours and disappeared, the whole money went up. There is no money, there is no rice, and there is no abundance. Borders were closed. So we must address, if there is any ministry where the president needs to be the minister, it's the Ministry of Agriculture. If we address the problem of hunger, all other things will come. But where you have people that are hungry, they will not listen to the issues of economic reforms. They will not issue the issue of GDP. They're not going to listen to the issue of anything you are doing because they are hungry. So hunger needs to be addressed first.
Well, some policies have also come which have been praised. One of them is this idea of local government autonomy, which the Attorney General went to challenge and got victory on. The local governments now should receive their funds directly. I don't know where you stand in the spectrum of reactions, but do you think that this is a positive development?
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will go down in history as a man who has restored democracy to the grassroots level. He has freed the local government from the bondage and the enslavement and captivity of the states and their governors. For over 2.5 decades since the restoration of democracy, local governments have simply been departments in the office of a state governor. They impose local government, unelected local government chairman, and refuse to conduct elections and corner the resources that's supposed to go to local government for their own purpose, and they take credit for the jobs which they did with the money for local government. Many of local governments in the country before this judgment are virtually existing on paper. Many of them don't even go to work because there is nothing to work there. They only go to offices when the salaries are due. The moment they collect their salary, everybody just disappears. So local governments were destroyed. Bola Ahmed Tinubu has saved democracy. Many people who come to Abuja in the last 15 years, where people ordinarily could have lived comfortably in their local government if resources go there and they can see projects. If we go back 30 years ago or 40 years ago, you will see that not many people are interested in coming to the capital cities of their states because they can get what they want within their own villages. The Supreme Court have saved democracy. Bola Tinubu has saved democracy. And governors who are crying, governors who are objecting, are simply not happy that they will not control resources that doesn't belong to them.
Yeah, but
if the president would withhold money for the states, he will call him a dictator. But this is what they are doing in local government. So now you are only going to have elected local government chairmen, elected councillors, who will be in control of a legitimate amount of money that will be sent to them.
But given what is currently happening with CX and the fact that, local government chairmen still emerge at the pleasure of the governors, and when these local government elections are conducted, the people who emerge are hardly different from those who are of the same party with the governor in power. So some people are saying, while this might be commendable, there is still so much work to be done to truly, get the benefits, the full benefits of the expectations of this particular judgment. Do you agree with them?
Yeah. You see, in every steps, there are this first step. And this first step has proven to be positive, fantastic. The local government now have a legal instrument to back up their independence and their autonomy. And the next thing is to have an electoral commission which is not within the control of state governors, which will bring in legitimate representatives of the people as heading the chairmanship and the councillorship positions. So this has been achieved, and I believe that the next will be achieved. When you have autonomy, even if the local government chairman is a stooge of the governor, or he's satellite of the governor, or he's satrap of the governor of a state, the point is that he will take responsibility for his actions. So we send money to you. Before, a local government chairman would say, the money was not sent to me, it was sent to the states. And I didn't know anything. But now you are responsible, you have the alert, and then you should use the money that goes to you to your local government. The next is to reform the election. The financial aspect of his address, next is to election of local government chairmen and councillors, which should be done not by a state independent electoral commission that are simply another parastatal of the state governments, but by an independent, whether INEC or a different electoral body.
Senator Shehu Sani, member of the 8th Senate and human rights activist, thank you so much for coming on Hard Copy.
Thank you for having me once again.
Well, that's the program tonight. But as always, we want to hear from you. So please speak with us using the handles showing on your screen. Thank you for watching. I'm Yusuf. Good night.